Hi, welcome to our daily encounter. Today we're going to be talking about how to distinguish the voice of God in your life. And it's going to derive or driven from 1 Samuel chapter 3, where Samuel goes to sleep next to the ark of the Lord, and three times the Lord speaks to Samuel. And all three times Samuel doesn't recognize it as the voice of the Lord. He thinks perhaps it's Eli speaking to him. But Eli's like, no, I didn't say anything to you. And eventually Eli catches on and he says, it must be the Lord trying to speak to him. And he said, the next time that he speaks to you, say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And sure enough, the Lord does speak to him again. And Samuel says those words. And the Lord gives a word against Eli, a very harsh word. You see, Eli's sons were very, very wicked. They were misusing their role as priests. And God basically said that he was going to curse Eli and his descendants after him. It's a very, very harsh word, but God wanted Samuel to speak that to Eli. And Samuel tells Eli what the Lord had told him. And in response, Eli says, it is the Lord, let him do good, or let him do what seems good to him. And so he accepts what the Lord had said, even though it was a very harsh word. And what we walk away with is, we think about, there are a lot of times in our lives, perhaps, that God is trying to speak to us, but we don't recognize it. There's a lot of ways in which God can speak to us. It doesn't have to be through an audible voice like what Samuel heard. He could speak to us through other people. Sometimes God puts wise people into our path to speak words of wisdom to us, to point us in the right directions. It might be leaders at the church. How many times have you gone to church and the preacher spoke the exact message you needed to hear that Sunday? That spoke directly into your situation, even though he didn't know, he wasn't aware of what you were going through. It might be through a spouse. The Lord trying to speak to us through a spouse, or through a friend, or through another fellow believer. God can use different people and speak to us through other people to try to get us to go in the right direction. The Lord might also speak to us through our circumstances. Maybe God is trying to call you out of a particular career that you're involved in, and he brings a lot of difficulties and trials into that career to try to drive you out and to pull you out. Maybe it's a relationship that you need to get out of, and God causes certain things within that relationship to call you out of that. It could be a lot of different things, but sometimes God uses those circumstances to say, okay, the direction I'm going is not working for me. Let me try a different direction. Let me try to see what the Lord is trying to tell me and where he wants me to go. And of course, the main way in which God speaks to us is through his word. And that's what we're trying to engage in here at our daily encounter. To get into God's word, to let God speak to us through his word. And in all of these cases, whether it's through another person, whether it's through our circumstances, or it's through God's word, in all these circumstances, we need to take Eli's advice and say these words, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. That is, to tune our ears to what the Lord is trying to say, to be aware of our surroundings, to be aware of what other people are telling us, to look deeper into the scriptures that we read them, that we're not just reading through them real quickly just to get our reading done, but that we're trying to see what is the Lord trying to tell me through his word, and to let the Lord speak to us, and to let him know that we have an ear turned to him, and we are listening to what he is trying to tell us. If we do that, and we have this posture before him of constantly listening and looking for what he's trying to show us, we can be more in line with his will in our lives. And God won't have to nudge us so hard. He will be able to just direct us in a very soft way, because we'll be so in tune with him that he can direct us very easily. But sometimes, because we have a deaf ear to the Lord, or we have a stiff neck against him, he has to use extreme measures to get us to listen. And of course, we don't want him to have to go to those extreme measures. And that can be solved if we'll just keep a listening ear for the Lord. But there's something else here that we can pick up from this story. Because it's not just enough to know what the Lord is trying to tell you. It takes a heart of submission to accept whatever the Lord is trying to tell us. Notice the message that Eli received. It says in verse 12, this is what the Lord is telling Samuel about Eli. It says, "In that day I will carry out against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I am about to judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knew, because his sons brought a curse on themselves, and he did not rebuke them. Therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for by sacrifice or offering forever." That's a very difficult word to receive. And yet he received it from Samuel in the proper way, because after Samuel gives him that message, once again Eli says, "It is the Lord, let him do what seems good to him." And that should be our attitude. The first thing is, Lord, speak to your servant, I am listening. The second thing is, you know what, you are the Lord, do what seems good to you. A lot of times God might be trying to speak to us, but because it's not something that we want to hear or something that we don't want to do, we turn a deaf ear and we don't listen to him. And it might be that God puts all kinds of things into our lives to try to wake us up, to try to break us out, and we just ignore it. As Dr. Phil would say, how's that working out for you? You know, you look at the way that you're dealing with relationships or situations, you know, how's it working out for you? A lot of times we live with all of these things that are afflicting us and going against us, not because we're trying to serve the Lord and there's just afflictions there. It's because we're constantly trying to work against the obvious path that God is trying to take us in. But if we can just have the attitude, one, of listening, Lord, your servant is listening, speak, your servant is listening, and also you are the Lord, do what seems good to you, then we will know what the Lord is trying to show us, what he's trying to teach us, what he's trying to tell us, and we'll have the heart to follow whatever it is that he's trying to show us and whatever he's trying to tell us. And that's the type of life that we want to live, so that we can be pleasing to him in all respects, and to have our lives totally consecrated, totally in line with his will, to do his pleasure. So let's just think about these things today, guys, as you do reading and as we go about our daily business. Let's have our ears tuned to the Lord and see what he's trying to tell us, and obediently follow whatever it is that he is trying to show us. And with that, guys, I thank you for watching the video. Once again, I hope it was helpful to you. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.